Do you believe tech is damaging your kids' learning, their well-being, and are they not smarter than their parents? These are all questions we're going to be answering in this episode of the HiTech Podcast. What is up, folks? Welcome back to the HiTech Podcast. Like I said, we've got a lot of ground to cover, but before we do that today in this episode, I'm Josh, one of the hosts of the HiTech Podcast, joined by the great Will Illingworth, who, at least in camera, looks like you're matching me.
I agree. I was thinking that
fun.
when we got on. I wasn't sure if it was true or not, but
yeah, I don't know if it's real.
Burgundy maroon vibes going.
Yeah, that's what the shirt is. Yeah. Yep. So our cameras are mostly color coordinated ish.
I've had this hoodie since I was a teenager, so I know you've seen this one at some point.
Yeah. Well, I was born with the shirt, so I've had it longer.
That was a perfect one-upmanship. It's like, oh, I've had this since I was 16. Yeah, I was actually born in this shirt, so
I was born in the shirt, so
I was born in the dark.
What up, son?
Molded by it. Shaped by it.
Anyway, folks, welcome. We got some interesting topics to talk about. This is a HiTech Podcast. One is shirt colors. That's an interesting topic. You know, it's kind of like that dress that people debated over a long time ago. I don't know, kind of.
Was it blue gold or white something?
Yeah, well, how long ago was that? That was a long time ago, right? Anyway, this is the HiTech Podcast brought to you by two proud millennials who, yes, know how to troubleshoot our technology, Gen Zers. Some of you don't. Anyway, welcome to the HiTech Podcast. Before we get into things, just a reminder, the HiTech Podcast is on all the interwebs. So make sure to subscribe, like, do the bell. I don't know, whatever else.
I like
comments. Comments
even
are cool
if you don't
too.
like
Do that
it,
as well. Yeah, follow us on any of the platforms you're following on. You can find us at all socials at HiTech Podcast or at HiTech Pod. If you want to reach out, you want to be on the podcast, you want to tell us how old Will and I look, you can email us at inbox@hitechpod.us. And then also lots of fun stuff, links to the stuff we test and show, / articles that we use to talk about the topics we're talking about are all on our website at hitechpod.us as well. And then Will looks like he's about to drop something.
I've got two very important things to say, Josh.
You got two very important things? Okay.
Very important things to say for
two
the regular
very important
episode.
things.
This is not extended cut content, folks. This is primary cut content right here. Okay, first and foremost, hit us up, inbox@hitechpod.us. What do you think about the beard? Come on, folks. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, you get some facial hair. Are you actually going to grow a beard? Is this happening?
This is my sabbatical beard. The choice is whether or not
Marissa hates beards, right? It's
well, she doesn't like kissing them. She doesn't like my beard, for that purpose.
If it gets long enough, it's just like kissing a bear.
Oh, that's weird. Anyways, that's the first and most important thing. Head over to inbox@hitechpod.us or over to our socials and let us know what you think about the beard. I'm curious if Will should keep the beard or not. But the second
do you think it shouldn't be called a beard when you compare it to my beard? These are all things you need to put in the email.
For years, this guy's been telling me to grow a beard. When I actually have something started, he's like, "Yeah, it's not a beard." I'm like, "Come on, man."
Yeah, I gotta make sure up. You got a long way. It's a start. It's definitely,
this is 3 weeks.
A start.
This isn't even 3 full weeks. This is 2.5 weeks. This is pretty good.
That'd be like a week.
Just was like overnight. I get that. Second most important thing, you heard it for the first time in the last episode if you watched on YouTube. But we would like to formally announce, we didn't think about this, our HiTech Club. We have not talked about it in the episode. It's not been going out on socials. We put our first ad in the last episode, 243. But here you go. We're saying it for the first time on the episode, letting you know we have the HiTech Club going. It's over on Buy Me a Coffee. You can get there very simply by going to our website and finding that information, or by going to buymeacoffee.com/HiTechPodcast. We're not going to bore you with all the details here in the episode. You're going to hear an ad later, but I feel it's worth us, it's you and me.
Yeah, we have HiTech Club. Yeah. You get extended cuts. Some of the stuff we've been talking about might be in that extended cut. You go check that out, and there's other fun stuff coming.
Yeah,
to the HiTech Club.
Most importantly, I think it follows with the ethos of the podcast. I am anti-advertiser, as you're learning in my de-googling,
which is why we're advertising twice.
Journey. But the thing that I'm against, it is ironic until you hear this part. The thing I'm against with advertisement is how much they do to track you and force stuff on you and invade your privacy and then sell your data to the FBI. And, there's lots of things like that.
We do that very transparently. We do
We're
all
not
those
doing
things, but
that.
transparently.
We're not going to do that, right? We don't want to get into that world. Josh and I actually had a very good conversation that led us to this idea, and we really hope you check out the buymeacoffee.com /HiTech podcast to see what it's like to support the podcast and become a member, to see more content, the extended cuts, the merchandise, all the good stuff. So that's the last of it. It's the formal announcement, but you're going to hear those ads from us in our episodes going forwards to encourage you to join the club.
Yeah. So if you're tired of hearing about that, join the club, and there'll be less of it in the episode. Fun fact, and more content.
Exactly.
Best of both worlds.
It's the best of both worlds.
I knew that was going to happen, you know, and it's
did it
surprise.
anyways.
I enjoyed it just as little as I thought I was going to. That's about it. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Back to the conversation that we're here. Does tech ruin our kids? Great conversation. Definitely not a hot topic that people are going to feel passionate about. Depending. Pause. Yeah, it feels like simple. I don't know. No. So why is this coming up? Right. One, it's a hot button topic right now. Will and I love talking about those. But two, I've been having to deal with this conversation a lot at work in different environments. Thank you, Justin. If we ever have you on to talk about this, I will also call you out for this conversation. But it is also because there is more stuff happening at a congressional level conversation about technology from a lot of different directions. I think AI is spawning a good bit of this conversation. Rightfully so. I think there's some big questions about AI and how it impacts people and the suicide situations we've seen through AI. Calls for regulations on social media is another reason we're seeing this at the congregational level. But there's been a new development of this within the last, beginning a year, really. I mean, it was going on before January. That, but the big hit is this. During congressional conversation about technology and learning and its effect on children, a specific testimony went viral. It was by a guy named Dr. Jared Horvath. Good old Jared. Dr. Jared Horvath. He's a neuroscience and co-founder of Learning Made Easy. He testified before the Senate Commerce Committee on January 15, 2026 about hearing of technology's impact on kids. And so the reason this testimony went viral is because it's been all over like CNN and a couple other places. Or CNBC, whatever, I don't know, news, C-SPAN, that's what I was looking for. There's a lot of C's in the news, in case you're curious. It's gross. Anyway, in his testimony, he talks about that about like $30 million has been spent on laptops and tablets in schools. What this can be most often referenced as, it doesn't reference it in our summary that Will and I were looking at, but it's the like 1-to-1 program, right? It's basically this idea of every kid needs some kind of device. And the rise of EdTech in K-12. I mean, Will and I can probably attest to this. Like, well, we come from higher ed. It's always been my vibe that, man, in K-12, they are EdTech happy. To put it, there's an EdTech company for everything you can think of in K-12. You know what I mean? Yep. It's a thing. And we've interviewed several of them on this podcast. So you can check out other episodes. But there's been a lot of tech invested into learning. And so there was a real study with research behind this. Now, Will and I'm going to give this complete caveat at the beginning. Will and I have not had time to dig deeply into the research yet. So this is an episode 1. I would call this the LaCroix episode of this conversation. It's the light version, and we're looking to dig deeper into this. Actually, I'd love to have Justin on to join us, who's been on the podcast before, Dr. Justin Harbin, a friend of ours. He's been digging much deeper into this. So he knows a little bit more about the actual research than we do. Will and I have dug in enough to have a conversation about this. And so we're starting that conversation here in this podcast episode. Yep. So please don't kill us if we're missing something. If we are, let us know. Because we're just seeking to understand this more. Now, we'll give some of our initial opinions because I think we know enough to at least form opinions about what's going on. But anyway, so he argues out of this research that it's showing that basically generation, what is it, Will? Z at this point? I don't know what letters we're at. Yeah. Gen Z. Duh, Josh. When you said Generation Z, it sounded different. You know, I didn't
World War Z or zombies. Yeah, but actually,
I didn't think of mid. I just kind of thought you were talking like a normal person. They essentially he argues we've created a generation of less cognitively capable than their parents. This is the argument that he makes.
Yeah.
Effectively calling classroom tech a failed pedagogical experiment. His case basically rests on 3 pillars. Students who spend more time on school computers tend to do worse on international tests. A review of over 20,000 studies on EdTech tools suggests most perform below the effectiveness of ordinary classroom instruction, and screens are inconsistent with learning best practices. They reduce friction in ways that actually hinder memory formation and human relationships that are central to learning that can't be replicated digitally. And he argues that they're less cognitively capable. Now, I do know enough about this study to know that one of the key elements in this, that as somebody who, I'll just be transparent, doesn't necessarily fully agree with this position, that's hard to wrestle with, is they did try to do a study where they did tech enhanced teaching and compare it to non-tech enhanced teaching practices, and basically tried to argue that, like, if we're going to use this tech, it should be better than the non-tech enhanced. And there's a lot of situations in the research that show that it was either just the same or it wasn't better. And so this is where he's making the argument that the tech experience has not necessarily made learning better. Now, I have a lot of different thoughts about this, just general reactions, but we won't go that far just yet. So he's basically arguing that children today are less cognitively capable. And it's interesting. And I'm seeing this in a wave of what I'm calling the pendulum swing against tech in learning. Yeah. Which is this idea that tech isn't actually helping in learning. And this has always been a thing. There's schools, Montessori method tends to lean anti-tech. They really like their wooden tools.
Which we use every day in work.
Yeah. There's these movements away from tech in the education space. And this is just another example, but it's taking off more than I've seen before. Will, anything else to add? I mean, you've been kind of following this a little bit, what's been going on. It's been connecting to some other things you've been looking into. So I'm curious, anything else I'm missing here that you think is worth mentioning?
I'll say that you and I grew up around this too. You know, it's one of those things where we were probably just before the 1-to-1 movements. You know, I wasn't in traditional education myself. Did you have a laptop in high school? Like, were you given a device?
So our school was ahead of the game. We didn't each have individual laptops, but we had laptop carts.
Right.
So
there was access to the devices.
There was a progression. Yeah. So we didn't use them in every class, but like there were times we would pull out laptops for different things, like research projects, writing things, things of that nature. They were the white MacBook laptops. You remember those? They had like the big fancy plug. Yeah, we got some like grant from Apple of some kind, and that was how we got a whole bunch of Macs.
That plays into Horvath's issue or point here, but why I say that is I'd almost miss this problem because we grew up with it if I wasn't paying attention or concerned for the issue, right? Like parents today, in one sense, are all used to their kids like, oh yeah, I want my kids to use a computer. Of course the Chromebook's battery's dead. I need to get a second charger. Like, I know parents of kids today, quote unquote. My younger cousin, he's 19 now, going to be 20. I watched him go through this process of bringing the Chromebook home, or when he got an iPad, or that kind of stuff from the schools. And it's kind of like what we expected to happen. There was an expectation as tech became easier to access, as we rely on it more day to day, as smartphones, happen. Adults are doing it. Why don't we want our kids, our learners, doing it as well? We want to prepare them. I've heard this time and time again. We want to prepare them for the future workforce. So it's not surprising to me that when maybe the motivation was, or maybe the parents' side of it was ignorance / kind of benign, okay, cool, sure-ishness about it. You know what I mean? Like, parents weren't like, oh my God, I need laptops, or don't you dare give my kids screens, right? There wasn't a lot of that with our generation. It rolled forward to the point where we're the parents. Our age bracket is the majority of parents, is growing into the majority of parents with kids in school. And now we use our phones every day. We use our computers every day. So it's expected that the kids be doing it too. Horvath is pointing in a couple of his points of his testimony, I'm looking specifically at section 5, why screens undermine learning. He's talking about what the technology has an effect on, like, actual cognitive science, while suggesting that the issue is the money involved with ed tech. Right, that it was incentivized. His executive summary says, if federal policy continues to incentivize large-scale digital adoption without demanding independent efficacy and evidence, it risks compounding long-term educational workforce harm. Like, and I agree with that. Everybody on the outside, everybody around education was just kind of like, yeah, sure, why not? Cool. Nobody inside was ensuring that it was tied to outcomes, that it was tied to efficacy. And so you've got Apple showing up with grants. You've got the federal government putting money into it. You've got all this stuff happening for free to the consumer, to the student. At the end of the day, though, ending up harming more people than it's doing good. That is still, I think there's still a lot we could say on that. And I think I'll hold that opinion for a little bit. But that's what we're seeing here in this testimony, is this push towards, or this issue with the fact that it happened accidentally almost, and at the same time it was incentivized for companies to just dump their hardware and their software on the learners without regard, without check. There's no checks and balances when this effort came forwards.
Hey, Will. Hey, Josh, do you wish this episode was longer? Like there was more time to spend with us?
Be a lot less editing.
That would be super cool, right? Yeah. So like, if you're listening or watching and you feel that way too, you should become a HiTech Club member, because you get extended episodes. There's lots of other stuff that Will and I talked about. You know, Will and I say dumb stuff all the time, and if you want to hear it on the podcast live, check that out.
You might even hear Will say things he's not supposed to say, which I've edited out never before.
For sure. If you want to hear the unedited version of Josh and Will, become a HiTech Club member. You check that out. You get extended cuts. You get access to vote on future topics. You'll get discount options on merchandise that's coming, and a few other cool things. So go check that out. Links in the bottom description of the episode, or someplace on our website, hitechpod.us. Make sure to go check that out and subscribe.
Please and
become a
thank
club
you.
member. Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, the money component is a big deal.
Yeah.
In this, and I think it plays a factor. And I mean, so I'll give this our brief reaction here, just initially, right? I bristle at this whole thing, and here's why. This may be a Josh bias. Take it if you will, podcast listeners. But whenever somebody says an extreme perspective, I tend to bristle. And I also have this bias where I struggle, and there are going to be people who study this for their living and are going to push back, and that's fine. I welcome the pushback. I bristle at studies of people in general, just because like it's like we like to make these data conclusions like people are just data points, but there's so many factors to human beings, and just because we have certain cognitive science that can back some of these areas. You know my opinion. I also think some cognitive science is a little overconfident about how people learn and do their stuff, right? I don't know if there's clear black and whiteness to the way people learn and what tools help them learn. And I feel like this is too much of kind of a black and white perspective that I struggle with it. A little bit. So my initial reaction is kind of like chill. A bit.
Calm down,
guys. That makes sense. Yeah.
I'll caveat this by saying, like, there may be researcher Horvath may have an opinion on this. I haven't seen it in depth yet. It's not a part of the executive summary. I've gone through, kind of 7 pages of this executive written testimony. I haven't watched the actual testimony to Congress. But one thing that I think is not present in this is an evaluation of the teaching methods themselves. Right. So you can do an analysis, a non-tech classroom teaching room and a tech teaching room doing instruction. And you can see on the outcomes, students in the teaching non-tech room perform better than the students in the tech room. You can do that. And that's more what this suggests has been done, right? We're evaluating if tech is in the room, then which is the better outcome. But that supposes that the teachers are effective at using the technology in the first place. Because the thing that is possible, or I think what I would see or expect to be a bias in this study, is that if a teacher is teaching without tech, Josh, I think that they are probably someone who's been doing that for a very long time and is very competent at teaching without tech. While it's very likely that even senior or tenured professors who are good at teaching may not be good at teaching with tech. And I've got some anecdotal, even firsthand evidence to suggest that's true. I've seen that be true, right? I've seen fantastic educators who I appreciated their lecture method. I appreciated their in-classroom activities, how they would get students to do think, pair, shares, et cetera, who could barely navigate a computer. So, it's great to have these kinds of studies that help us look at the problem. There is a problem, right? We're seeing lower trending numbers on outcomes for students. That suggests a problem. But the point that Horvath is pointing at may not be the only primary issue. Nothing is only one issue, of course, right? Everything's multivariate, and that's, I think, what you're suggesting about humans are messy. But if he's looking at this and saying tech's the problem, I think that is short-sighted. It could be how people teach with tech. It could have been the Wi-Fi that affected those rooms. It could have been the types of students in that classroom with the tech. I mean, there's so many things that need to go into consideration with this study. I wouldn't take this as something that says this is how we move forwards, right? This isn't. But the problem is, he said this to Congress. This gets so much attention. This may become how the United States reacts to this issue.
Yeah, I think, and here's the crux of the criticism a little bit, and the crux is this, which is and again, Will and I need to dig deeper to really understand this better. So it's not entirely fair what I'm saying here. So fully acknowledge this. I think this is more complicated, both on Horvath's side and on the side of what Will and I are saying. But essentially, kind of his layers go to looking at international test correlations. Immediately, I just have general problems with that, but that's fine. Layer 2 is what's kind of this meta-analysis synthesis, which is his centerpiece, right? He's basically looking at these different analyses of individual studies, finding an overall effect of EdTech on very skilled direct teaching. And he's basically looking for a certain level of deviation. He's looking for tech to either make it better or level out, or it gets worse. And in almost all of the ones, it gets worse. And so that's the crux of his argument. And then the other layer is just neuroscience in general. An understanding that sometimes too much screen time, too much technology can become a distraction. Leaning on this idea of taking notes by hand is better. There's also a large argument that research study was entirely failed and not helpful, so I won't go into detail on that. But in general, the criticism of this is that that Horvath's research is kind of all over the place and isn't as controlled as most would like it, right? There's some quotes from somebody from a university statistician from Northwestern University who claims herself to be an EdTech skeptic, but says that his benchmarks are not entirely realistic. And there could have been better carefully designed studies where two groups were both receiving the same form of instruction. And the effects are kind of all over the place. And so I think that's the one argument I would make, right? Is in general, my take on this is, we're just too quick to look at research and assume that, well, they did all this research, so this must be right. Now we pendulum swing. And this is what I've been trying to say in these arguments with coworkers and things as well, is don't give me that this isn't ironic that this is also coming up at about the time that AI is becoming a problem for everybody. And now we're going to basically say tech is completely useless in education. Yeah. I see a pendulum swing reaction to technology that, don't get me wrong, I don't think Horvath is entirely wrong. Tech has an impact on people, and it's not always positive. We've talked about that a lot on the HiTech podcast. But to completely basically just throw it out, I don't know that that's fair. I think we're putting a lot of complex problems with a generation that has had to go through COVID, has had to go through a lot of different things, that has had the dawn of the smartphone influencing them on a regular basis, right? I think that there's a lot of complex pieces to this, that drive this. And so for that sake, my general reaction is, I think, like, okay, this is interesting data, but how can we find a way to leverage this to find ways to not overuse tech, right? Tech is obviously not the golden solution. And then also, how can we find ways where tech was used intentionally, and compare it against other instruction that's not the perfect in-person instruction, right? Like there's a lot of different scenarios of education, cough, cough, online learning for students who can't be on site, that we're not taking into consideration here. And also, as a millennial, when somebody just stamps a generation stupider than their original generation, it just screams older privilege. And just like, it drives me nuts. I also think that's just that's not fair. This is a complex thing, and just to dub a generation dumber than their parents before, give me a break. Like,
that's the clip right there.
Right?
Oh man. This is a tough one. You know, it's an important issue, and it's not, like you're saying, it's not something we need to ignore, but are we missing the larger issue? Are we missing better opportunities by maybe focusing too narrowly on this? This has been a fun one. I didn't know where we were going to go with this episode, but I think that this has been quite effective at digging into not only this real issue, but what has tickled my fancy as we've gone on is, what would Justin say? WWJD, you know, it's
he's gonna hate half of what I said on this episode.
Justin, this episode's going straight to you. You're gonna get the whole extended cut for free, my friend. You've got to see this. We've got to have the conversation. So I think that's it, right? Thank you, folks, for joining us. This is a wrap on another week of the HiTech podcast. As always, go find us on the socials and all the things, like, subscribe, etc. And until next week, we will continue empowering minds,
embracing tech.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Buckle up, let's ride.